John Hensler, our Michigan Airline Trail Managers here as well. We're just available if any questions come up on the agenda items that are under your unfinished business, number 1 and number 2. What used to be number 1 is now number 2, I understand, from the agenda. I wanted to make a comment on the cost of participation agreement, number 5, just in case when we get there's any questions on that. I wanted to point out that discusses a $1.3 million shortfall on the funding source that we initially procured for the trail, which is the Transportation Alternatives Program grant from the state of Michigan, Michigan Department of Transportation. That's been closed. As people in the Trailway Council know, we were pursuing the funding source for that, and it was kind of up in the air as to whether we were going to get that or not. Council members, I believe, received a letter today that confirms that the funding source on that did commit to funding our project to the tune of another $1.3 million for phase 1, which closes that funding gap, and then an additional $900,000 for phase 2, which actually covers the city of Wixom and Milford Township. So I just wanted to make sure you had that and had the benefit of that. We're happy to answer any questions on that. There's some interesting stuff also contained in number 5 about how the money would be administered, and if anybody has any questions on that, I'll defer until later on. But I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that letter that was just received in the last week's time. Good news for the trail, and myself and John and everybody that participates with the Trail Council appreciates Walled Lake's participation. We're very excited about how far along we are in the project. I think we've surprised ourselves, and we're much further along at this point in time. I know I'm very pleased with how far along we are in the process, and we look forward to the discussion of your unfinished business, number 1 and number 2, and offer any knowledge, experience, or expertise that we can provide if the time comes for any questions.
Well, while you're speaking,
sure.
It's been approved, but nothing has been signed at this point.
Correct. There's going to be a grant agreement that will have to be executed by the Trailway Council to accept the money. It's similar to the Transportation Alternatives Program grant, where we have to go through a step to certify those funds. We were deferring that step until we had this additional funding source, because obviously a $1.3 million hole is more than a little daunting for all of the communities. And we're pleased that we have this funding source now identified and committed to providing that funding to the project.
Currently, that won't take place until August 1st.
That's when they're looking to negotiate or not to negotiate, but to get the documents executed. That's correct. That's what they refer to. Right. Just like the wheels of government, the private funding sources, wheels grind slowly, I guess.
Right. But up until that point, it's still not.
We have a letter of commitment that says we're committed to providing the funding. It's just a matter of signing, dotting I's, crossing T's. So.
Yeah, exactly.
It does say they're committed to providing funding.
Mayor, could we ask the manager of Wixom to stay? Are you going to be with us till we get to the...
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Participate in that discussion after we...
Appreciate our participation.
Sure. Mr. Hensler and I'd be happy
let him participate, and the trail manager's here. We might want to let him...
Sure. I think it's very important to stay.
That.
Thank you both for coming.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to see other city governments in action, so it's good. I used to be an elected official back in the day. It's taking me back. So. Thanks very much.
I have one question.
Yes.
You said the 900,000.
That's for phase 2.
And that is for Milford and Wixom only?
Yeah, there's an additional piece of the trail. The current airline trail project that the Trailway Council with the 3 communities are handling ends at Wixom Road in the city of Wixom. This phase 2 is, they call it the unfinished, or the unfinished mile. It's more than a mile, but there's a portion in Wixom and there's a portion in Milford Township that would be the next phase of the trail. So that's...
The same person is
providing that funding.
Donating.
Correct. Right.
It goes behind Corex.
Yeah, exactly.
Behind Corex and...
Exactly, behind Wixom downtown and Corex. And right now the plan is that where the airline trail ends at Wixom, basically it's going to jog down to Pontiac Trail, just use the existing sidewalk to get through downtown Wixom, and then people connect to the existing trail that's beyond there.
Is that a 10-foot wide sidewalk?
It's pretty wide. It's a downtown sidewalk, so it goes from the buildings to the street type of thing, so it probably technically qualifies, but it's not an ideal situation. We're looking for more of a consistent trail experience there in the long run, but that's where it's at currently.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the time.
Talking to you in a few minutes.
Sounds good.
Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that has anything to say? Yes.
Good evening, my name is Randy Champ. I live at 1275 Leon Road in Walled Lake. My family's had that property for over 70 years and has been in Walled Lake for over 100 years. I'm here again to voice my objection to the proposed condos and or PUDs, as they call them now, behind my house extending down to Decker Road. And I call upon the council to respect the master plan and its analysis and goals, as the council will be held accountable, I'm sure, to the citizens that's supposed to represent. According to the master plan 3.5, woodlands and tree stands in the city should be preserved in their wildlife habitat. Soil erosion control for soil erosion control, natural buffers, aesthetic and ecological benefits. 7.3, analysis of the master plan. Walled Lake is considered built out and will only experience growth through redevelopment. Master Plan 10.1. It's vital that the vacant areas be planned properly to meet the needs of the residents. We're the residents, and we've been coming here since February telling you what our needs, our concerns, our problems, our priorities, our stresses are about. To meet the needs of the residents, not the developers. Master Plan 12.2. Housing types should complement each other and be properly planned. This community, Woodland Estates, was designed as estates, large lots. In previous years, there have been many splits, but nothing bringing them down to 30, 40 units in this type of space. They don't meet the complement of the community. 12.4, specified goal of the master plan is to protect, preserve, and enhance the unique and desirable natural amenities of Walled Lake. Well, according to the master plan, the natural amenities are the lake, woodlife, wildlife, woodlands. Master Plan 13.4, limit vehicular access points, limit light and noise pollution. Well, I tell you, I'm very blessed to have had a large yard all my life, where I can see the wildlife and the deer and the fox and the doves and the owls and the bats and the fireflies.
Okay, are you summing up your statement?
Yeah, I'm summing up.
Okay.
If you tear all the back part down, I'm going to have a mosquito swamp again. I'm going to have lights back there again. I'm going to have more noise back there. I'm asking you to take all these in consideration of the density and how it fits the community and how it fits the established goals of the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any, yes, Mr. Hill.
You have, 902 North Pine Trail, owner of Aaron Industries. James, thank you for your support in helping. One of my young men had a major accident at work, and the Walled Fire Department was spot on. They were there. Even got a recommendation from the hospital to let them know. So you guys did a great job, and I appreciate it. We appreciate it. My company appreciates it. As you hear a lot from the community here about the Airline Trail, I've owned property on that for over 42 years, almost 2,000 linear feet on the trail itself. And I've got a different opinion about it than mostly people. So I like that it would go to the city as a vote. I like to see it as a millage increase or a millage look at anyway. A choice from all the public instead of just people that come to the meetings. I see very few people on it. I saw 14 last month. I count them. I mean, I'm there every day, even on weekends. And I saw one lady on there with her child, even though it is now on a bike with a carrier, which is fine. So I'm opposed to the paving, not opposed to limestone. I'm just opposed to the financial burden it's going to put on the city, and I'd just like it put on in a village, vote, see what the rest of the community says. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Anyone? Nobody else? Okay, we will close the audience participation. And we'll go on to council report. Does any council member have a report tonight? Okay. City manager.
Mayor, let's start with the Department of Individual Statistical Reports. I've requested a motion to receive and file.
Motion to receive and file. Support.
Okay, is there any questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have just one or two questions if it's possible.
Okay.
On page 40 of the check disbursement, it shows $1,056 and some change to Mutz Mitts. What is Mutz Mitts?
That's for the parks. For the dogs.
Oh, the mitts, you know, you grab.
I got you, okay. Thank you. And one other question is, page 41, $1,500 for trees. Where are we planting new trees at?
Those are planted along the Legato area there. There's a Wellsboro, and some of those will be covered by the grant money, and some of those will be covered by the developer. But we outlaid the funds initially.
Gotcha. And then just one last question on the page 43. It shows a vehicle purchase of $8,844 and some change. What vehicle would that be?
Dennis, do you?
I didn't
Is that-
hear what he said. What's the question? I'll try to answer it.
On page 43, it says vehicle purchase, $8,844.
So
Did we purchase a vehicle, or is that like parts for a vehicle?
Canfield Equipment
for the
is the
police?
Canfield Equipment is the vendor that outfits the police vehicles. And that's the payment for, I think the last three. There were a couple of invoices that were missing, so we asked.
So it goes under vehicle purchase, right?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Is there anything else? Roll call, please.
Robertson.
Yeah.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Costanzo.
Yes.
Locke.
Yes.
Lublin.
Yes.
Osnick.
Yes.
Ackley.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, another item. Before you, you have a public budget with my budget message.
Yes.
It's at the beginning of the packet. It's 179 pages, quite comprehensive. It's been posted on the internet, has been even in draft form sometime. It's posted now with the most important part of the document is if you turn to the third page of it, you'll see that the city finance director, along with other members of staff, prepared a budget that met the requirements for the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award from the Government Finance Officers Association. I would like to thank our finance director and budget director, Colleen Coogan. Colleen worked very hard to do this. This is something that hadn't happened in quite some time. They had left off that part. So that's the part that we're fixing now. We've stabilized our finances. Now we're trying to do a presentation that begins the details. If you read my budget message, you'll see essentially the plan that was put in place. It's come to fruition. You gave me direction in 2010 when I got here. You put together that plan in 2009, the months before I got here. We've met most all of those requirements, if not them all. I told you then it's going to be a lot of years to do that. You also see that the projections of $18 million in debt for that has been cut in half. Again, for political reasons, they're peddling other nonsense, but we've cut it in half. We've done that by serving in multiple positions. Different times, we push it back out, we contract when we need to. So the budget presentation, and you should start with the budget message, the 9-10 pages there, and then the rest of it's some details, and that should explain where we are. When we do our year-end audit, the next thing you need to look at is the audit. But right now, I'd like you to, when we receive the file, it's already up there, so we don't need to have a discussion about, is it out there? The hard copy on the front desk, and anybody who wants to pay whatever it is, a quarter a page, then they can get hard copies too. So, but it's on PDF form and it can be downloaded. So if I can get the council to move to receive and file it, so the record shows that you got it, and that discussion doesn't happen over and over again.
Move to receive and file.
Support.
We have a motion to receive
And file.
and file.
Another item on the agenda, I would like to
Can we have
notify.
a vote first?
Yeah, I'm sorry, go. Go.
Roll call, please.
Ambrose.
Yes.
Costanzo.
Yes.
Locke.
Yes.
Lublin.
Yes.
Osnick.
Yes.
Robertson. Ackley.
Yes. Okay, now you can go.
Another item on the agenda is we've had a resignation with the code enforcement officer. The code enforcement officer is taking a full-time job in another city. We wish him well, Jeff Rondeau. So that'll require some restaffing and redoing. Chief, you got anything to add to that? He's been assigned to work with the police department. Through the years, I guess that whole code division's been bounced around. Both chiefs and I have set, and we're going to be meeting to formulate a better plan based on the experiences, good and bad, that we've had to deal with code enforcement. One of the issues with code enforcement is the political signs that always come up. You've got people just ignore the law when it comes to political signs. There's been no enforcement, and there's been some enforcement, and it becomes a political issue. Right now, we're in the middle of an election, and we've got locals who are running for office who use the city's property to showcase their candidacy. Well, we're good with that as long as it's on private property. One candidate in the past used city resources to shine the light on his signs, so he had a Broadway sign there when he came to town. That's a violation of law. It's a misuse of city resources, and we won't be tolerating it during this election cycle or the future. Jeff Rondeau has been pulling up the signs, and he keeps them. We're going to cite people if that happens. And so when we get to the November election, that's not going to happen. We have another election coming about August 7th, 6th, but we're pulling up signs all over. They want to put them on city property. They want to use the city's resources to showcase their talent because they think they're better than the law, and we're not going to tolerate that. So having said that, that responsibility right now is resting with the police department. Where's our code guy going? Can we tell him that? Do we know?
I believe it's finally going to the city of Birmingham.
That's a kick up. So he got his certs. He was another one of those guys that got, he was part-time for us and part-time for another community. He went and got his certifications for various things. So once he got that schooling behind him, they picked him up. So we wish him some luck.
So when is he through?
A couple of weeks out. He's still here, and we're hoping that he does everything he needs to do for this election cycle. I say the biggest issue I got now, well, we got an election coming up. That's an issue, but the real safety issues are that lady that just talked about an issue. We're going to get him on that. But we will have somebody to shoot to follow up even after Jeff leaves. But we're talking about it in a couple of weeks. Some people have difficulty with Mr. But he's, nobody wants that job. It's not the best job in the world. It's almost as bad.
That live in the same community.
It's almost as bad as being a mayor or a council member.
You got anything worse, right?
Yeah. City manager, man. I have one more item. I have another item. I got some very important news for you. We have another resignation. The finance director and our local CPA, Colleen Coogan, is submitted her resignation. This will be her last council meeting. We're going to invite her back.
We need a little notice when you get warm up to the site.
She's said she's going to go to Ireland, so we're going to see how that goes and be a grandmother for a day or two. But we're going to see. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Ms. Coogan. She helped us get on the path. You remember she came as a consultant, and I wouldn't let her leave. We wouldn't let her leave. She is the second CPA to work in finance, but she is the real deal. She serves on various boards. She served with the Trail. You all recall, I served as a member of the Trail Council. I'm probably the oldest member, if you will. Maybe Deanie from over Wixom was around before me as a backup, but I served on the Trail, and John served on the Trail, the council member, and so we handed it to her because she was, the finances were pretty much of a mess when the new group came in. You know, they didn't even have a budget. You know, we had to go in there. They're angry with me because we call them out, but some of the new folks on the Trail Council didn't know. When we got there, they didn't even have a budget, which is a violation of law about it, and they were running everything through the Commerce Township's records. It was pretty much a mess. It's pretty much straightened out now. The new supervisor's on it. You know, he's got a different opinion on how to do trails. He was for it, now he was against it, now he's for it. But he recognized the trail is an important issue. The only dispute we have, or I have with this trail, is how much it's spending and how we're not telling the community what it costs. Again, when I got here 8 years ago, no cost to community, and we're in the millions now, millions. So we're gonna have that discussion later. But we got some solid people. You got Steve Brown over, he's sitting on the trail. He's a solid guy, not only he's well educated, but he gets it. He knows the deal. Supervisor Scott, he's maybe one of the best politicians we got sitting on the board over there, you know, bless his heart. I don't know where he learned that as a deputy, but he's pretty good at it. But we still need to ask those questions. I attended the last meeting with the trail. Lisa Colleen, they didn't even want to talk to me because Colleen didn't show. I mean, I didn't tell them that I was there because she was doing one last project for me. So I filled in, but her shoes are pretty tough to fill. I have a plan. I'm not going to tell you about it tonight in terms of filling the spots. You know how it works. Sometimes you contract, sometimes you expand. We do have a plan to fill her shoes, or at least walk in her shoes for a day or two. It'll be tough. You don't think so, huh? Well, maybe not. But we're sorry to see her go. She's leaving in good standing. She's been an outstanding resource, not only for me. She's one of the best I've ever worked with. She was a little raw in some areas, and she's become pretty good public works director too. So we let her do a little bit of that. She's got her crew over here that's going to give you a speech early tonight. So Colleen, have you got anything you want to say to these folks as you leave the building?
I appreciate all of the opportunity that I've had here and the ability to get out from even behind the finance desk. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm very proud of what you have accomplished here. If you even just look at page 9 of that budget book we gave you, the pension debt in this city is still an enormous burden. I feel for your taxpayers. I feel for you that you have to help solve this, but it would have been another $4 million more than what it is now. You have done everything you could do to control that debt, and it is now just a question of paying it. I would like to, if you don't mind, make one last comment to a comment that was made by one of your residents, that we shouldn't be holding public safety vehicles hostage to the trail. We shouldn't be asking for millages. And I would just like to explain that city finances are a lot like homeowner finances. If you have a roof that is falling apart, you don't go on a vacation. Even if you get a sale on your vacation, even if you get a good deal on the tickets, you have a limited amount of money to work with, and you need to put the money where it does the most good. The trail is a fabulous thing. I'm a huge biker, and there's no one on this council that has ever indicated they were against the trail. This is a question of limited amounts of money, and you are still dealing with an enormous pension payment. 1/3, almost 1/3 of your tax revenue goes to pension debt. You do not have a lot of money to work with. We had a 10-year plan and the trail. It was a unique opportunity that you've received a donation for engineering services, but it was earlier than what your plan indicated you were ready to spend the money on. You have stuck with this plan. You have added no new debt on your taxpayers. You have reduced existing debt. You've just been an impressive group to work for, and I thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
You got any more bad news?
Well, I think you know that we're going to have to fill a spot. Mike Mauer on the planning board has submitted his resignation, so I think you know that.
That's part of my
Okay,
report.
well, then you can bring that up, but you need a motion for the record to accept his resignation. And with that, I'll give it back to you.
Okay. Correspondence, anything? Mr. Attorney?
What you have before you is a draft template development agreement for the proposed Beechwood PUD. As you recall at the last meeting, you asked me to go forward and prepare this draft template agreement. The PUD application has been pending with the city for a while. It's making its way through the process, and part of that process is to prepare a development agreement. What this development agreement represents is essentially a starting point if and when the city gets to the point of actually hammering out the details of it, if the PUD receives the final approval by City Council. I prepared a memo for you that kind of describes the PUD process for you. It tells you where we're at in that process. There still is an additional approval that is needed at the Planning Commission level before you hold your public hearing here and you start taking formal action on the actual PUD application and the agreement itself. So it's primarily, like I said, it's a starting point. It hasn't been provided to the developer yet. It will, inevitably undergo some additional changes as we make our way through the negotiation process. But if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do. On page 57 of the document, of the draft, it says, on June 19th, City Council preliminary reviewed the proposed PUD concept. At that meeting, there was no plans presented to Council as far as what the layout of the development would be. There was no discussion about those plans. There was nothing that was presented to us. Well, as I read this, it says that we actually reviewed the document, and I think that may be why there is a little bit of confusion with the public out there. They think that we reviewed the plans when all we did, all we had was a discussion about the process moving forward, and that we were told we needed to schedule a public hearing because we can't take the rights of the developer and property seller. We can't take away the rights of the property seller and the developer to have one. That is the only discussion that we had.
Where does it say we reviewed the plans?
It's right in the middle, whereas on June 19th, City Council preliminary reviewed.
The concept. It wasn't the plans, it was the concept that was presented.
The concept, just the concept of it.
And we were told at that time,
Well, if I may
we weren't
finish,
approving anything, it was simply the concept that was presented to us.
there was no concept per se of the project itself. All we had was just discussing on the process moving forward. I think that's why there is confusion with the public out there on this project. Like when they open up their newspaper a week later and it shows on the headlines that we've approved the PUD, like we approved this plan. We never approved anything. There was nothing presented to us. All we had was a discussion.
We can't help what they put in the spinal column.
I understand that, but what is
We
this?
are not saying here we approve the plan. Mr. Attorney, I guess help me out here.
Yeah, just for purposes of clarification, so that you understand and that members of the public understand, the PUD process, part of that requires a public hearing before City Council, and then after the public hearing, and it accepts the comments during the public hearing, and it is at that time, after doing after holding the public hearing, that it does the actual review of the PUD application and the plans itself. We're not at that step in the process yet. What happened was there are two approvals that are required at the Planning Commission level. The preliminary approval, which was granted at the June meeting by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission then made a motion to refer the concept to the City Council. So it was sent to the City Council for a preliminary review of the concept. And that's all you did at the last meeting. There was no action taken on the PUD application itself. There was no formal plan review. There was no review of the application. There was no review of any of the findings from the Planning Commission. It was simply a preliminary review of just the general concept. You know, we're going to put in a subdivision. This is where it's going to go. This is how many units it's going to be. You know, it's going to be a condominium unit or condominium development. And it was simply just a presentation, more or less, by the developer and explaining generally what he would like to do. So that's all that happened at the last meeting. There was no action taken by council regarding the application of the plans themselves. It was just a preliminary review of the concept. And it has to go back to the Planning Commission. There is an additional step at the Planning Commission level that needs to be taken. After that step is completed, then at that point it will come back to City Council for the public hearing. And then after the public hearing, that's when the City Council will take the formal action on the plans and the application and reviewing of all the findings of the Planning Commission. But that hasn't happened yet.
Mayor. Madam Mayor.
Yes.
It's not a fair statement to say the council didn't review the concept plan. The plan, the spinal column put a picture of the plan.
Correct.
And that's what the picture is. It's the plan that was submitted. In 1974, when they started land planning, that was what a land use plan was. It was a map. Land use was a map. That's it. It got thicker and thicker. You have to start somewhere. If you recall, the discussion was we took the latest rendition of that schematic, whatever you want to call it, it was a concept plan, and we got it to the council as soon as possible in the interest of transparency. And even then, they said, why are we just now seeing it? Because we got it yesterday. And the idea was to get it on the table. I said at that meeting, we didn't ask for any vote, but it was a concept plan, and it is a plan. It's a very conceptual plan. So it's not fair to say there was no plan and they didn't do anything. You didn't vote, attorney said so, and we sent it back, and it went as it was intended. It's being kind of respun for whatever reason, but it's going back. We always knew that. It's going to go back, and you're going to have another hearing here. We're going to have a hearing there. There's going to be a lot of hearings, but you've got to have preliminary discussion and in order to get that. So there was a concept plan. That's the picture that's in the spinal column. I didn't read the article in depth, so I don't know that there's any misstatements in there, but the idea is, could you have rejected it that night? Yeah, really, you could have. I mean, we rejected one before. The lady sitting to the right of me made a motion and killed it in its tracks, but you have to take it some way further along. That's what we're doing here. So there's nothing been approved. It's conceptual. Even the template is conceptual, and we're doing it that way so that people see it ahead of time what's going on because of what happened before. So I think it's going better than it could have, and it's not fair to say that there was no plan. They have a conceptual drawing, and if that's certainly not enough to vote on, and that if they don't bring back all the things they need to the Planning Commission, we'll get a no vote. I'm still sitting on the Planning Commission, and I'll vote no, and Mr. Schaefer knows. So that's my say on that. I didn't read the spinal column if there's anything in there, but I think the very fact that they put that in there shows that there was a plan. I mean, that there was a conceptual plan. That was the latest one as of the day of that meeting.
All right. The plan that's referred to in the ordinance is a final engineered site plan. And we haven't reviewed that yet, but there was, as the city manager has indicated, certainly there was a conceptual plan that was presented.
Yeah. As to council members Costanzo's,
Don't think Mr. Costanzo's finished.
oh, I just wanted to say, reviewing the proposed PUD concept by discussion. I mean, we reviewed it by discussion. I
I
mean,
agree.
it's written fine.
You have something else?
Reviewed by discussion.
It just states that how I interpret it is opposite, that we actually reviewed the plan as that was the plan concept that we were going to present to the public. That is how I read and interpret the verbiage in there. Now, when it says reviewed, it means examined, inspected, viewed. We didn't do any of those things. We only talked about scheduling hearing because the rights of the property seller and the developer. That is all we had talked about.
That's a review by itself.
Right,
That
you're
is a review.
missing the key term, which is
That's
the
what you
adjective
did.
you're trying to review. It says preliminarily.
Your take on it is different than,
Right, you went from 40-something houses down to
Right.
36. You went in from a detention to a retention pond. They would hold 2 consecutive 100-year range plus 25%. So all those things were through the discussion to get to where he could have some direction in regards to completing the rest of the plan, which would be submitted.
But there was no plan that was presented to us
No.
to that effect.
There was a plan, there was a layout.
Concept, not a plan.
Okay.
What do you call it, a plan, a concept, preliminary review? Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anybody else have any comments? Do we need to actually vote on this, man?
No, there's no action that is required, it's just
Okay.
part of my report.
The next item is executive session regarding confidential.
There are 2 other items that I prepared a report on.
Yes.
They're status reports. One was on the union case that we had recently, and then the other one was just a follow-up on the HUD case that we had with Ms. Feinberg. Those are provided to you for primarily informational purposes. There's no action that is required by City Council in response to either of those matters. So I'm not requesting a closed session. If you want to have a closed session just to talk about them more, we could. That's up to you. But there's no action that's
Okay, let's do it this way then. Does anyone want to have a closed session regarding the NAEP report?
I don't think it's necessary.
If you do, make a motion, and if you don't, we'll go on.
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, and then the next one is on the Feinberg. Everybody clear on that? Okay. All right.
Let's move on.
We're going into unfinished business. We switch, so the first is the Trailway millage resolution for the ballot language.
As council instructed at the last meeting, I went forward and prepared a resolution for a proposed ballot proposal for a millage to help fund the trail. So that is what essentially is before you. It would be, if adopted if the resolution was approved by council tonight, it would then you have to go for a review. I believe it's the county that reviews it, is that correct? And then it would go through that process of receiving county reviews, and then it would go on to the November ballot, and the city of Walled Lake voters would then decide whether or not an additional millage should be passed and assessed to help fund the cost of the trail.
I noticed that there are no dollar amounts or timing amounts listed in this resolution.
I did not have that information when I prepared that. I sent it to...
we have that prepared for you. I'm going to let the treasurer and/or the finance director have that discussion. We can talk about it, what millage you would want to fill in. But if you're interested, we got to kind of know before we get into all of that discussion, whether there's a real 4 votes or want to put it to a vote. I personally would support, recommend that we put it to a vote. And again, this is not to vote down the trail. This is the idea to get more funding. You know, we're capped it heavily, and what you're asking to do is spend, what the trail supporters are asking to do is spend your tax dollars, which we should be spending on infrastructure or other things. They want to spend it on the trail. You know, we're pitted against each other here. If you did a millage and the people of Wall Lake supported it, then that gives us some relief in terms of funding other city projects. Indeed, if it failed, you can still fund, you still got the 420 to fund it. I mean, we've set all that aside. So again, it's politicized, it's being peddled, a vote, a millage vote was to kill the trail. That's not at all what this discussion's about. It's about revenue needed, and this is extraordinary revenue. When I came here that many years ago, spending this kind of money and millions of dollars on the trail was not in the cards. It was all going to be free. Well, it's going to be expensive, but we've got, you're going to hear later, we got issues over the subsections that need to be done. We're trying to do all of that. The engineering firms are going to make presentations about trying to get funding for our roads, which are collapsing. You got Decker, you got Ladd, so you're going to hear all about that. So this administration supports it in terms of giving the people the right to vote, but you get to decide whether, if you put it on, and if you decide to do that, how quick you want to collect the money and you want to spend over time. So she's going to tell you what she's going to tell you what a mill is. That's what she's going to tell you. You know, I'm sure everybody up here knows what it is. It's where you grind corn, right? That's, you know. So I would say to get where we need to go, we need to let our treasurer take her first shot at dealing with the millage and what that would cost the taxpayer. And before we get there, generally speaking, millage is $1 per thousand of taxable value. So if your house is $1,000, you pay $1 a year in tax. If you're on the lake and your house costs $2,000, is assessed at $2,000, you're paying $2. But if you assess 1 mill, the couple that's got the $1,000 house, that pays $1 for the trail. But the couple on the lake, they pay $2. So then you're going to get into that whole equity discussion, but that's why you guys get the big bucks. You get to have that discussion. So I would like to...
Before we go into that discussion, can I ask a clarification question?
Sure.
Just because we have talked about so many things on this trail. We are committed to the 400 and some thousand.
That has always been a commitment.
That's a commitment.
You get more funding. They're peddling that. They're doing it for the wrong reasons. It's absurd.
Just answer my question.
You answer. We're committed. You voted for it. So yeah.
Okay. And according to the letter, and according to what Steve talked about, the fear of that additional amount is being funded by a donor. Am I correct?
Well, Steve works for Wixom. I work for Wall Lake. Steve has less fear about that than I do. I know, you know, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I've seen too many things on the trail thing that didn't go quite right. So until we get to check, I'm still skeptical.
And that's my fear.
You know, my priorities are different. My priorities are with funding that. We found the 420. We're going to do that. You committed that. Steve is the pro over on the trail now. There's no doubt about it. But his agenda is different. Just like, you know, he's got 3 times the population we got. Commerce has got like 6 times the population. So if you're dealing with population, how should we be splitting these costs? 1/3. We're 7,000 people. Wixom's probably.
Well, that was the big discussion we had last year that didn't go anyplace.
Well, you get to talk about it
tonight. Redoing the agreement based on equity, not.
You're going to, if it goes any higher than that, here's how this works. I believe one of the council members used a quote that I heard when I was in the Marine Corps: mission creep. You know, the financial creep of this project is extraordinary.
Correct.
You know, and nobody knew that was coming, and it can continue. So this is a part where I get to put in the record, I told you so. And so when this all goes and there's no additional cost, you get to tell me I was wrong. But you need to be real cautious. Steve Brown with Wixom has an expanding tax base. He doesn't have the same issues politically or financially that we have. It's exploding in Wixom. It's a great place to be. He's got one of the best jobs in the county. They don't have a city manager in Commerce, but if they did, that would be the best job because it's exploding just as well. Wall Lake is not getting any bigger. Every time you spend $1 for an extra project like that, you're taking away from the sidewalks, you're taking away from the infrastructure, and you're going to be dealing with that one day. So,
And one day soon.
well, 420 is committed. This doesn't undo that unless you know, I mean, if somehow they
420
all
is
back.
what we're committed to, and if any more comes in, we don't have to go that route.
Well, 420 doesn't fix the depot either. That's another thing.
Well, I know that.
You know, this
I
whole
know that.
discussion about fixing the depot, that's going to be Wall Lake's baby. And this idea that we got a trail now. You're always going to have a trail. We own it. So that's the discussion's coming up. You're going to have to pay to fix it. Even with the 420, you're going to have to pay more in Wall Lake to pay for the depot. This is not going to fix, I'm not aware that 1.3, and if it is, let's get it in the contract. So I'm skeptical, and whenever
I
a
think we all
donor.
are.
Huh?
I think we all
Well,
are.
if we get the funding and people vote for it, then, you know, then we pay as we go, and we're going to be in better shape. But I don't want to have this discussion next year. You know, the record note shows that I'm telling you, it's going to cost money. The trail is going to cost a lot. Does it bring any money back? Probably not in my tenure, and not in yours, or anybody else here. It's not going to turn the economy upside down. It's going to be fun, but anyway,
Okay.
you guys.
Let's hear about mills.
Okay, you answered the questions I wanted. Thank you.
Okay, so a little bit of background information on what a mill is. So millage is actually a Latin word for 1,000s or thousands. So back in the late 1700s, the United States used a mill as a form of currency. So just like today we have a penny, it's 1/100th of a dollar. A mill was 1/1000th of a dollar. So over time, 100 years later, they decided things cost too much, we don't need that type of currency, just like some believe the penny we may not need in the future. So they no longer use the mill for currency, but it kind of took hold in terms of property taxes. So for every one mill, it would cost $1 per 1,000, as the city manager explained. So just as an example, if you have a home that's a taxable value of $100,000, if it was 1 mill levied against your property, it would be $100. If it was $50,000 taxable value, it would be $50, and you can go, you know, up or down based on that. So basically, for council, I do have some numbers here. But it really depends on the type of revenue that you're hoping to receive doing a millage, levying a millage. And also the timeline, what type of timeline you're looking at. So I have some examples. If you were to levy half a mil, it would take 6 years to bring in revenue of around $600,000. For 1 mil, that would take, let's see, 3 years. So it's just, it really depends what council is looking for in terms of revenue for the trail and the timeline. So.
The millage that we're talking about is assessed against what's identified as our taxable value,
Yes.
our total taxable value through the property appraiser's office in county, our total taxable value, and so we get those reports and our latest taxable value, and that's how she came up with that guess on in terms of what we can bring in. So if you decided on a millage, then the next thing you decide is you don't want to try to collect it all on one year, or the next time it comes up, you can spread it over 30 years or 20 years or whatever the law will allow. The question is what will the voters vote for if, you know, I don't know that they want a millage for the rest of their life, you know. So you have to decide not only the millage, but the time. And you don't get there until you decide how much you're looking to collect. Do you want to try to get some of the money back for the 420? You want to try to bank some money to do the depot? and do the perpetual maintenance, because this is going to require perpetual maintenance and other things go along with it. Remember, again, they seem to think that that's not possible, but once the trail starts and everybody's up and running, one member, including us, can pull out of the trail. And once that happens, it doesn't change the trail, it'll still be a trail, but everybody will be responsible for their own maintenance. For instance, if they did that, then the city of Wall Lake will be responsible for the depot, the lighting, the water, the maintenance, the painting, and all of that. Wixom won't pay that. We don't have revenue coming in. Commerce has got a nice sign, it's bringing in revenue, so they probably get the revenue. So there's some issues there, but your discussion starts with, you're looking to try to recover some of that money for redoing the depot. Do you want to try to recover the 420 and then we can spend that on the public safety equipment or infrastructure and that kind of stuff? That's the discussion you need to have.
So this time frame you're giving us is just to recover the 420, was that what you said?
It was for 600.
I can't hear everybody at once.
It was for 600,000.
600, okay.
Yes.
Do we have a handout of Chelsea, somebody? Do we have all of it? Do we have more than one?
Yes.
But do we have to have the numbers before we vote on this, or can we vote on this and then?
Well, I don't think you want to vote on something.
How do we want to work this?
I don't know if you can do it, but you've got a short period of time, otherwise it's not going to make it. But this should be useful in terms of the annual revenue. The treasurer is going to walk us through that handout.
So our current taxable value is just over 199 million. So the first column is a proposed millage rate. So if you had half a mil, and you can skip the next two columns, you would generate roughly $99,000 in the first year. And then if you do go back, you can see if you have a $50,000 taxable value, it would cost the resident or the property owner $25. If you have $100,000 in taxable value, it would be $50. And then as you go forward, you can see how much each year, year 1, 2, 3, 4, just to see if you were to say, okay, 600,000 is what we would like to have in revenue, it would take you the 6 years. If you wanted more than that, you can see 10 years, how much revenue you would collect on a half a mil. Is there any questions about that?
Mayor, I think we might invite the trail manager to speak, because one of the issues you might want to discuss is if we're going to put that on the ballot, is to bring enough money in to rehabilitate the depots and guarantee that.
I was just going to ask Mr. Brown if Wixom would accept payments for the next 6 years on the money that we owe him.
Easy payment plan.
I can tell by his smile that's a no. I thought it was a good idea.
You don't ask a poor person to borrow money.
Yeah.
No, well, Mr. Brown has looked at, he's heard there are taxable value, and it's so small compared to what he deals with over there, he must be stunned.
He might be willing to do that, huh?
He's going to go
Maybe
down.
we should get Mr. Brown and Mr. Scott in the same room and see what we can work out. John, would you like to make any comments?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. We are planning on doing more fundraising to take care of the depot. We don't plan on asking for any money from the council from any of the city councils or township boards to pay for the depot. We're planning on doing that all through fundraising grants. We're going to probably apply next spring for a DNR trust fund grant. We can ask for up to $300,000 for that. And we already have an application into State Farm for a small grant that's $25,000. We're looking for more of those small grants. We haven't had the opportunity to present to some large foundations yet. We raised a lot of money in the last year. We've got a lot of good grants. We have a good project. We have a nice presentation. It's easy to present this stuff, and people are receptive to it. So I feel personally that I feel pretty good about applying for grant money and getting some money that we can use to first shore up the depot and then actually rehabilitate it. We currently have some Oakland County Historic Preservation architects that are studying the building right now, and they're going to give us a detailed report probably at the next Trail Council meeting about what they think it's going to cost to rehabilitate the depot and give us some options on plans of action and things like that.
Well, that would be kind of late for us to factor in how much money we can generate with this millage.
Yeah, we really don't have any options. We don't have any estimates right now on how much it's going to cost to rehabilitate the depot. We don't have that right now.
Right. But if we wait another month, it would be past time for this to go on another ballot.
Likely, yeah.
Do we have any assurance that the depot is in fact restorable?
That's what we're waiting for with the architects. They do feel that it is restorable.
Standing water sitting in the basement for a couple of years.
Yeah, they have.
That's not a good sign.
They have. They've said that the structure is solid, but they haven't elaborated on that, and that's what we're waiting for in the report.
It's not sitting on footings on the front, I can tell you that.
Okay.
It needs a lot.
It needs some work. Yes, it does.
Anytime you refurbish something, the cost is much higher.
Well, especially something built in the 1800s without codes.
That's all part of it.
Yeah.
I have a question. If we were to put this millage out and we were to get donations, is there a way to
fund it?
Stop collecting it?
Right.
Well, understand this, we are still going to have to maintain the trail for the rest of everyone here's life on an annual basis. You heard from the gentleman from West Bloomfield that he goes out there and they refurbish, they re-scarify, they do all of that sort of stuff, and they do it yearly. So,
And I might add that money that's coming in from the proposed billboard, the new billboard that's going to come in next to the bridge, that's up to $25,000 there. We're currently negotiating right there, but that money goes to the Trail Council, not to Commerce. It goes to the Trail Council, so that will be spread out amongst the 3 communities in terms of maintenance. If we don't use all $25,000 that year, I want to put it into an endowment fund, so that keeps growing over time, so that when we have future needs for maintenance, we can spend it.
But it doesn't take away from the fact that at any point in time, according to the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, that this Trail Council can be dissolved. So each community would go their own way. And at that point in time, just like the city manager says, the maintenance of our portion would be incumbent on us.
True. It is my understanding that if one community leaves the Trail Council, the other 2 can still stay in the Trail Council. It would take 2 to leave for it to dissolve.
But we talked a year ago about possibly getting a commitment from the other 2 communities on a commitment ourselves. If they were to leave the Trail Council, that the depot would still have to be maintained amongst the 3 communities. And that never was resolved.
No, it never was.
Well, that's actually
I don't know if the other 2 communities are willing to go with something like that, because I think that's one of council's, it's one of my biggest fears, is that we're going to inherit this depot. And we've got another place that we have that isn't going anywhere fast. And that is something that it is, whether it's the trailhead, it is the depot for the trail. I mean, it was there, it was the only depot. It is a historical piece, and I think we need a commitment from both of the communities that should they decide down the road that they will still contribute to the maintenance of this depot.
Well, I could certainly bring that up to council, to the Trail Council, and we can talk about it, and I'll put it on there. I set the agenda, so I can put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
You know, I think at the end of the day, we need to get it to our residents to make a decision on funding this park.
Well, I agree with you as far as how we're going to fund it, But we're already committed to this grant for $420,000, so I think we're taking care of a couple things at one time here. There's a couple issues going on. But I do think it needs to go to a vote of the people. And they can decide whether they want to pay extra taxes to maintain this trail that we're gonna have no matter what. But if we maintain it out of our current operating budget, we're not going to have anything to do other things that we need to do as a city. So
Right, and
we
that's why
can't
that-
have our cake and eat it too.
Not just to fund, not just to maintain it, but to fund it.
To fund it, correct.
You know, that's not a bad.
So right now, we
that's not
know
a
that
bad way.
we need that $600,000 number. That would probably work real well as far as
There's
trying
plenty
to
of other
keep
uses.
keeping us
If we
even.
had that kind of money, even if the city got involved in rehabilitating the building, we can rehabilitate the building cheaper than others might be able to. I mean, but we gotta be in a position to rehabilitate the building, because otherwise, once this goes, I don't know that anybody cares about the depot. We will own it. And we're the one that's maintaining it now. We painted it, we cut the grass, we do that kind of stuff. We patrol, you know, I got my police, public safety, so we do that now. We expect to continue to do that. And if there's no plan, and I think John will agree, there's no plan, I mean, other than hope. And hope is not a strategy. We learned that for the last several years, you know. Hope is not a strategy. So if you get a vote and you get the money, we will be able to move forward, fast and forward, do the Cadillac version of what they got, and if it turns out we get all these grants and stuff like that, we can put some of it in the other parks and stuff that are associated with it. So I don't think it's a bad.
Maybe we coin that as part of the rail and to benefit our Parks and Rec system. Okay?
Well, it is a Parks and Rec
Well,
system.
exactly, so let's pick a number and let's pick a timeline, and let's just move ahead and let's sell it, okay? I mean,
Let's be
I'm looking
reasonable with
I'm looking
this
at the
number.
half mil, 6 years, 600,000.
That's what I'm
That's not a
thinking.
bite, that could be something that could be absorbed, plus it gives us operating funds.
It
Because
might-
you can go to Kensington for $20 a year. I mean, you know,
Right.
so let's
Yep.
keep it reasonable for our citizens.
Most people in Wall Lake taxes have gone down, and most of the homes in the last several years because of a lot of reasons. One of you guys over there in the finance division can give us an example of some of the folks are paying half of what they used to pay in 2007. I mean,
Oh, some people are paying less than a third of what they used to pay.
I can vouch for that, actually.
well, we may not have the pushback on it, you know, people just don't like taxes, but we have to do that. And in 8 years, we've never proposed a millage increase to fund the budget. Yet,
Never
budget,
fund the budget.
we have not done that since I've been here. You've not voted to increase the millage at all. And the millage rate keeps dropping because of Headley. Headley requires that there's a drop. So if you look at the paperwork, you'll see there's a percentage drop. So the millage actually went down. We're collecting the same dollars, but it might pass.
So you know, that would be good.
So looking at
Certainly,
half
it would be
mil
good for
for 6
everybody.
years.
It would be good for everybody. I'll be able
You're
to
looking
fund my
at half a
budget.
mil for 6 years?
Right.
So I would just like to call out one thing, which is the mayor is correct that you have committed to the 420,000, but realize you are also committed to picking up 30% of any of the cost overruns of the project.
And there will be cost.
And there will be cost overruns. We have a sinkhole that just opened up on the trail. So you are going through swampland, right? There will be cost overruns. When Sandra and I picked the 600,000 number, we know you need more than 420.
Right.
We just don't know how much. We don't know what the cost overruns are.
And that 600,000 goes towards the 420.
It can,
It can.
Madam Mayor, may I speak now?
Yep.
Okay, when we were talking about writing this ballot initiative or directing the city attorney to draft this ballot initiative at last month's meeting, it was in case the unnamed donor did not come through for this project. Now the donor has come forward, and you know, I think a tax millage should be the last thing that we do before we explore other options As far as the maintenance of the trail, it's going to be a brand new trail by the end of next year, so there's not going to be any maintenance for a long time on the trail for at least a year, other than just maybe cutting shrubbery back. But it's going to be a paved multi-use trail with minimal maintenance required on it. We're going to be contributing our budget annually, which will be banked at the Trailway Council, can be saved for future use. By the time that the trail does need any kind of maintenance and we start talking about the depot, we should be starting now trying to find alternative funding methods, like through the sponsorships, through donations. There are options out there that I think we need to explore before we start asking our taxpaying residents for more money. We have a bus millage that's going to be on the ballot in August. We've done a library millage. I believe we have the police and safety millage due to expire. We're asking the residents to renew that. It may put a risk on that, if we start asking for more taxes and more taxes. I would rather we wait and unleash the fundraising power of our groups, particularly the Friends of the Michigan Airline Trail.
We are taking almost a $500,000 out of our operating budget for this. Even if they get donations to fix the depot or something that happens to the trail, that is not going to replace that money that we've taken out of our operating fund that we don't have. That's what I'm looking at. And when Casey made his motion was to put it on the ballot to see if the citizens of Wall Lake wanted to pay towards this trail. It wasn't to see what happens down the road. We need the money now.
Right, the 1.3 million
Yeah.
is what forced the issue.
Right, that just
Okay, we're
made
still
us
on the hook for 420.
right. The 1.3 just
His
woke us up
understanding of
and
what
said,
happened
hey,
at
we're
the
in
meeting
trouble.
is totally different than mine. The discussion is going the way we expected. It's always been a discussion. We need more revenue to fund all of the things in the trail. It's never been any different than that, and restating it, or, I don't know why Councilmember Costanzo sees it different than everybody here. But the discussion was about put it to the vote of the people, see if they're willing to pay for all the costs of the trail. And that's what this is about. It's because we have no revenue coming in. And what this would do is, if this idea that we're gonna go get 20, he said several times, he knows where money is. I want him to tell me where I go get that check. Well, he said, council member has made it like that somehow we, administration, don't know how to do that. Tell me where you go get that check, councilman. Where you get it? And how much is it?
Madam Mayor, I object to the question.
Okay, so we can't operate in a wish and a prayer. So right now, let's go back to the monies that we need.
Are you going to make a motion?
Yeah. Yes, I'll make the motion that the monies that would be requested to be placed on the ballot proposal will be $500,000 for 6 years.
No, $500,000.
Sorry, $500,000, sorry. Yeah, I'm bringing shorthand over here,
Let's get to the parliamentary part. You make a motion to pass a resolution, then you move to fill in the blanks.
Okay.
That's what you should do. It's going to get complicated unless you
do that.
You put the motion up for discussion, then you need a motion to fill in the blanks, and that's when your
So
motion.
make a motion to accept
Adopt the
proposal.
The resolution.
The resolution as written on whatever number it was,
1834.
1834.
Support.
Okay.
Now, under discussion, you can actually amend your own, you can amend your own motion. So you want a motion to fill in the blanks under parliamentary procedure, so.
Yeah, so do you want to make
come up with the
amendments
numbers,
to fill in the
Fill in
blanks?
the blanks, vote on that one, main motion, it passes, and then the lawyers got work to do.
To place on that proposal, or on that motion, $500,000 for 6 years. That'd be the amendment.
So that'd be
Which is $50 per year,
Well,
per
no.
100,000
It's
taxable
usually a
value.
little less than that, but that's what equates to a half.